It comes from a place of me seeing so many people be like, I failed my launch, and I just want to like grab their faces and say that you did not fail. You did not fail your launch. Nobody knew it. Nobody was primed for it. I would teach concepts that I would be like, oh my gosh, this is like, duh. And they would be like, wait, what?
Should we be spending like $8,000?
I love Facebook? This. Okay. Oh, y'all asked. These are such good questions.
Obviously. It's not official unless we do. So, boom. Hey creators, it's your hosts, Natalie and Yasmin, and you're listening to the Course Creation Podcast. We'll talk business, building digital empires, and how to create passive income to start living a life you love. We are here to empower those of you who are thinking of starting your own course and to support those who are already well on their way to success. We've built a 7-figure media agency on unique storytelling, and now we're here to share our story in the course creation world, and more importantly, to hear yours. We are committed to creating a space for learning and a space for diversity and inclusion. Now let's get the show started. 3, 2, 1, action. Welcome to today's episode of the Course Creation Podcast. I am Yasmin, joined by my partner in crime, Natalie, and our wonderful guest today, Ashlyn Carter. Ashlyn is the OG copywriter extraordinaire for creatives. Her business, Ashlyn Writes, is the place to go for marketing, copywriting, and curriculum. It is a center for creatives, visionaries, and entrepreneurs who need help and some love with crafting their strategic brand messaging to stand above the noise. Ashlyn's mission is to help creatives figure out words and copy that convert so that they can spend more time and energy on creating their legacy. Ashlyn, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm so excited to be here and jump into this. Thanks for having me on, y'all.
Awesome.
Yes, Ashlyn, thanks for coming on, and we're so excited to have you. Yas, I'm sorry I interrupted you. You had a question. Go.
No, I was going to go right into it. I was going to say, Ashlyn, you've been writing since I'm sure you stepped into this world. So tell us about your background and how you came to where you are today.
Absolutely. I was not the kid growing up that did like the lemonade stand who was a shoo-in for entrepreneurship. It totally fell in my lap. My background, I grew up like chronologically organizing magazines under my bed. Like I knew without a shadow of a doubt I wanted to go into journalism. And so that's what I studied in college. I loved it. I was in college in like 2009, so things were a little wonky. I was interning at some magazines and they started to close. So I went back senior year and I was like, I'm like not going into print. Let's go into PR. And so that is my focus and my emphasis was that political science, and I loved it. And so I went from there, sprung into the media world in Atlanta and loved it, working in first agency. I was in a public relations agency, communications agency for years. And then I went from there into more corporate marketing for one single business and all of their restaurants. And I love it. I feel like I know in the entrepreneur space, we do our tendencies. I don't know. Sometimes we bash a little bit of like the cubicle in the corporate life, but it truly gave me such a vocabulary of business and understanding of how overall marketing plans work together. I don't regret it at all. I loved it. And then I started my business, almost 5 years ago, about 4.5 years ago. And I don't know if you want me to like tell that part of it.
Yeah, tell us everything.
Okay. Yeah, like how did you start? How did you say no to the corporate life and then get into starting your own business?
Okay, so all the while that I was in corporate, I needed a break from the keyboard, and so I would go home and fill calligraphy orders for brides and for couples, and that was just like my artistic stress relief. I'm doing my corporate job, which I loved, but it was very stressful. It was media relations, so I was constantly planning events, working with journalists, pitching stories, taking them to all the restaurants, and going home and filling orders. And my sweet husband proposed, and so it was like one more thing added on to just a busy life. And to be honest, I also glamorized my job. I held it in like, I put work before everything else. Throughout our engagement, I just started to get really stressed. And so I began to track what I eat to the point of developing an eating disorder. It had probably always been a little bit latent, but I was just looking for something to control, honestly. It never started as trying to lose weight. I was just trying to control, like, we tend to do as high achieving women. And it was through that I ended up going into partial hospitalization right after we got married. And during that time, I realized that there was this world of people that got paid for what they did and they loved it and they worked for themselves and they made enough money. And I think we can all trace back to those like baby days when we're realizing like, oh my gosh, there is an alternative. What? I could not fathom it, or I couldn't fathom that you could do that and replace an income. But slowly these seeds started to get planted. And then I went back to work after I got out of hospitalization. And 2 months later, I came home complaining. And my husband was like, we're done. So I knew that I could do marketing writing because that is all I had done. And I knew that I could fill orders for brides as a calligrapher. I did not know how I was going to make money or figure it out. So I just began going to all of these wedding entrepreneur meetups, Rising Tide Society meetups in my city. And the more and more I heard them talk about sales and messaging and not being able to achieve either one, that is when that second kind of aha moment of like, oh, not everybody loves this. Like not everybody likes writing websites or figuring out like their elevator pitch and all this kind of stuff. And so I started to see like the Ashlyn size gap in the market. And that's when I did not go into entrepreneurship knowing I wanted to be a marketing copywriter for creatives. It was probably about the second month into it that I realized that was the niche that I wanted to fill. And we've been growing since then. So that's how I jumped into this. Didn't see it coming.
That's amazing. Well, congrats. That's, huge. And a lot of people are in the same place. So they need that little bit of a boost and inspiration and when it comes to your health too, realizing that there's alternatives, that we're constantly being fed what society expects us to do, but there's other alternatives. And sometimes you do need that one person in your life to believe in you, and you just got to like take the leap and make things happen. Yes. So Ashlyn, you have a really interesting and unique business because you bring a lot of uniqueness to your business. You have an interesting voice when it comes to the way you present yourself. And I think that you also, from what I understand, is you help your clients and your students and everybody else really find their voice so that they can, I think authentic is overused, but like really shine in their own way, but also like strategically shine. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Tell us about your business.
Yeah, that's a great question because I was making some notes. I don't think I've ever been really asked that so pointedly before. If I can be an example to anybody of like what I want to show through my specific like voice and my style, it's not for everybody. And I know a lot of entrepreneurs and businesses say that. But I want to be an example of that for our clients and our students who are like, there's no way. I can't tell you how many times people told me nobody will pay for that. Even at like early on, photographers were like, I don't know if I'd actually pay for somebody to help me with my message, and I'm like, game on, I'm going to figure this out. But like through figuring out, I always teach students, you've got to figure out your onlyness factor, your UVP, your USP, that secret sauce. Like, why should I pay you for what you do? Why do you do it better or differently than somebody else? And so really figuring that out is something that I focus on my clients, my students, and then unpacking and layering on that a voice and a style that sets you apart and attracts and repels. Like the beauty of the internet is there are billions of people on it, and you don't have to be for everybody. Like you just need to know what enough is, like enough revenue for you and your family is, and go after that. And once you feel that, rest. And that doesn't mean that it's such a beauty of 2020. There's a lot of wild things going on, right? But one good thing is at least there's so many people out there that are in the digital space that you have the luxury of deciding to be not for everybody, which is a blessing for sure. So the way that like breaks down, I guess, to answer your question about like what my business looks like. We do have an agency side of my business where it started. I love client services. I don't think I'll ever let it go. And that is copywriting services. So we do lots of different, specifically it's email marketing campaigns, launch copy, messaging campaigns, and then website copywriting. And so that brand messaging house is sitting over there, and there's a team of writers and me who work on projects together. And then I have a curriculum side as well, because because a lot of people, and it's something I talk about all the time. If you, like I just said, if you can't sell me on your business, who can? And I think a lot of creatives specifically, and I work with a lot of wedding industry entrepreneurs and visual artists, and they find out that copywriters exist and they're like, praise the Lord, I can get this off my plate. But if you've never gone through, if you're outsourcing the sales psychology, that's not good. So we've got to be able to figure that out. And you're absolutely equipped to do that. So there's the curriculum side as well.
Very cool. That's amazing. So the curriculum side of things, let's take it back to when did you launch the curriculum? And
August. And that would have been February, March, April, May, June, July, 6-ish months into my business.
Oh, wow. So it's super recent. I thought it was like a couple of years ago, but that's like super recent.
Yeah. 6 months into when I started. So that was 2016. Yeah. 6 months into entrepreneurship.
Amazing. Yeah. Amazing. So tell us about like the early stages of the curriculum, some of the challenges, and I guess for our listeners who are just getting into starting their programs or building a course, what are some of those initial steps that you took or that you would go back and do differently?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so I could talk about this part all day because like kind of how we were chatting before the call, like I made some big mistakes, but I think did some things right. One thing that I must have been told this because I was definitely throwing spaghetti at the wall. But one thing that I did was I did not even consider bringing on a curriculum or an educational or course side of my business until I was at max capacity with clients. And it got to the point where it was just me at that point. I think I maybe had outsourced a little bit of like PDF design to somebody. There were more inquiries coming in than I could take on. In addition to that, there was the second layer that there were so many inquiries coming in from people who were not at the price point level that I wanted to work with that I didn't want to let those leads go. So it was that Venn diagram of like both of those needs that led me to package up my process into a course. I've got thousands of students at this point, and I always say that like I just truly, I don't know, it rubs me the wrong way when people launch courses and they are their business is the only chance that they've tested that hypothesis and proven it true. Like I think you're onto something if you're your own best client, but I think you should test that with multiple others before you package it up and put it into a program as a proven system. And so that is one I built, and that first course, it's still my signature course. It's copywriting for creatives. I built it after I was like, okay, I've done this so many times for clients. Like it's time to put it into a package for students. So that is where it began. The first mistake I made of many was I put that out there without really, I didn't beta test at all. I just packaged it and put it out there. A sweet friend of mine, Jenna Kutcher, is a client. And so I had assisted on tons of her launches at that point. I think I'd probably done 3 in my first 6 months of business. And so I had watched hers enough to be like, I can hack this. And I put together the course and got it out there like great first quote unquote successful launch. I think I had 36 students. I had an email list of maybe almost 1,000 at that point. But on the other side of it, I realized the gaps in the curriculum because the most important thing about a course is getting somebody through a course, right? And I don't think I understood that yet. I didn't really understand how to teach. And so I saved and I purchased Amy Porterfield's. Back then it was webinars that convert and courses that convert. Now it's Digital Course Academy. And she's been a client. I've gotten to work on her campaigns for that, which has been so cool because I'm like, this product truly did help me so much. And that like light bulb went off where I figured out how to piece course together to get somebody through it and get them results, and it changed everything. So coming into like CSC 2.0, that is when, and here's my like third big aha learning. Have y'all heard of Tara Gentile before? I think her new last name is McMullen, but she has this concept, this theory called the living room strategy. And she talks about bringing in like living room style people to test out your curriculum. And so you teach, and then at the end of it, that lesson, and you're watching their faces and everything, and you say, okay, what do you want to learn next? And you teach them the next part of your process and layer in what they need to know, and bit by bit. And so that's what I was like, once I heard that, I was like, that's what CFC is missing. I've never done that before. I've only like packaged up my course, but I'm teaching it as, you know, I'm a level 10 in the understanding of this, trying to teach it to people who are 1. You don't learn in the same, like I didn't learn it in a straight line. People aren't going to, that's not how anybody's going to learn it. So I had to learn how to deconstruct it, and being able to teach people that beta testing style. And I took, it was 10 women. Yes, I made them pay because they got everything but the kitchen sink. I was doing like so many like one-on-one calls because I was really trying to get them through this and understand what had been missing that first time. And that is what helped build like the true version of what that course remains to be today. And that was the best. I'm sure I listened to her podcast all the time back in the day, so I'm sure that's where I heard that idea from, but I can take no credit. I probably would have never beta tested it, or it would have been a long time before I did. So highly recommend that process.
Wow. Thank you so much for that. You really gave us a lot there. I want to go back and unpack it a little bit more. So let's talk about that concept, everything in the living room. What did you call it?
The living room strategy.
The living room strategy. Yeah. So it sounds to me that it's like, you know, you're getting the feedback from your, you know, users or your students as you're going through the course, and really understanding what are the missing links and the gaps that they're not absolutely getting.
Yes.
And, you know, and I feel that's the hard part of teaching in general, is that what seems like common sense to us, or things that we already know and we just assume that people know as well, it doesn't line up a lot of the times.
Bingo.
Yeah. Okay, great. I got that. So I just needed to say that out loud.
I mean, it's exactly what you said. I would teach concepts that I would be like, oh my gosh, this is like, duh. And they would be like, wait, what? You know, like that's the coolest idea. I've never thought of that. And I'm thinking I would have never spent. So it's like little portions of the curriculum where I'm now like, no, this is a lesson. And we camp out on this because this is big for them. I just never would have dreamed that it was. And then there's other parts where I'm like, you see guys, you get it. And they're like, okay, cool. Like, let's move on. Like, that's not as interesting to me. But you learn all that through that kind of strategy. And I think another thing that was really helpful that gave me, because I'm pretty sure I would have completely not charged for that process, which was it was a 2-month, very intensive process. I set up like a Trello board for everybody, a Slack channel for us all, multiple one-on-one hourly calls. So they were getting a lot, but I don't think I would have charged unless I had understood that I had the right to. And I think it was that living room strategy article. It's a blog now that gave me the permission. So what I did, I have a lot of students. Some students were asking me on a call the other week, like, how did you fill that? How did you find people to like put in there? And so what I did, I think I cold pitched maybe 2 women, but in the months where I had leading up to that, where I knew I was going to do it, when somebody inquired, I feel like I put the emphasis on the wrong syllable there. Somebody inquired. Did I say that right? Anyway, when they reached out to work with me, I was like, okay, listen, we can work together at this price point, or you could get a price cut if you'd be willing to go through this with me and some other women, small group style. Like, I will give you everything. It's just an option. And truly, I had a great conversion rate with that. I did build out maybe like a mini sales page just to explain what everything was. I think I priced it at like maybe $1,000 to go through that. And yeah, I'm glad I did, because I do remember, and yeah, that was 2017, but it took my life for 2 months. So at least I had, some money to put in the gas engine to keep it going. But highly recommend it.
Very cool. You answered my question about how you got people to sign up, like the first 10. That's cool. I'm sure you get asked that a lot.
Yes.
And let's talk about that copy on the sales page that you put together as well, because that's kind of like the highlight. I mean, that stands out a lot. And we have all these conversations. We're the video gal, so we believe in doing everything in video form. But that doesn't mean that video does not need copy. It's just a different way of delivering it. It's a different way of us maybe organizing our thoughts. We have our own strategies. But let's talk about how important copy is, in particular on a sales page when you are trying to sell a course or a program. what's too much copy? What's too little copy? What's some of the key important things that we all need to consider?
Love it. And I've got to give y'all props because I feel like over time I have learned how like a video sales letter is such an important addition to a sales page. And like it just, especially the world we live in now, like your chance to look your people in the eye and like pitch them on why you know they need this is so valuable in video. So if anything, it's like our worlds have bled because I've started to learn it. YouTube too. Like I went into YouTube kicking and screaming, and then like now I love it. So when it comes to like the sales page itself, I am an advocate. Now, naturally, you don't want to oversell anything. So you're not going to have a long form sales page for everything. But since we are talking about digital courses, yes, you're most often going to have a mid to long form sales page there. For me, that means around like I would say usually like 5K words. The important part, just like when you're scripting a video, you follow a script, you have a process that you go through, and it's the same thing in a sales page or truly any copy, because you're trying to guide someone through the argument, guide them through, you're lawyering up, you're explaining and positioning in different points why something is a fit for them. So I walk people through it all the time. I have a template in the shop. We do sales pages all the time. Like I have a Sweet 16 formula where I will go through. I think there are 16 things that need to be included on a sales page. And as far as to answer your question too, Yasmin, about how much is too much, it's like pretty much a rule of thumb that people will still read long copy. They don't read boring copy. So I don't think that people have a problem. I don't think people are disgusted with a long form sales page, I guess, put it that way. But you've got to give that benefit of the doubt to the skimmer and make the skimmer able to get through it. It has to have enough copy, though, that it survives multiple rounds of scrutiny. If somebody is interested in your sales page, they're especially given a higher price point, they're probably not looking at it once, right? They're going to visit it multiple times until they've really solidified and identified if this is for them or not. So you need to be able to have the sales argument that can support that. And so that's really important. But I think I'm just a huge advocate, and you got to make that throw that skimmer a bone and help guide them through with headlines and subheads that help them understand, do I want to read this section or not? Help them find what they need in that long page. I could talk about these for a long time. It's like you stick a quarter in me and I can't stop. So you tell me what else you want to know about sales pages. I'm there.
Yeah. I say we keep going down this trend, and it's so funny because you hit home. It's between me and Yasmin, she will read everything on the sales page and I'm the skimmer. I'm like, I just can't read everything, but I will skim and take in for what it, Yeah. But even in our process, as we were creating our course and our funnel and all of that, we were like, let's do that. Let's have that long sales page. Let's give people a reason why they need to invest. And, work on those headings, because for me, like I said, I need to skim through it and I need to get to, but we also have all those videos as well. And so one of the things that we like to advocate for is not sticking to a script when you are on video.
Yes.
So kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that. Our belief is that, while scripts are amazing and scripts can really help you refine your idea and get your message out there, people can spot a fake from a mile away. So get on camera and be authentic. That word is overused. But be yourself.
Yes.
So it's if you're not comfortable selling what you're preaching or preaching what you're selling, however that line is said, then don't get on camera.
Yes. Totally agree. I love first that you hit on the fact that, you've got remember, there are multiple personality types that are looking at your sales page, multiple buying types. I am probably a little more like you, Yasmin. I need I will pro con list my way through. So I'm going to really weigh, is this where I would buy $11.59 before cart close. I don't think I've ever bought before $11.59 anything that's on a deadline timer. I think too, but then there's one of the copywriters on my team. She's so dear to me, but she is very much of an emotional buyer. She'll tell you, she doesn't even need to she'll land on the page and she'll know in her gut if it's a yes or a no, and so your page has to be able to support those different types of personalities. The girl that needs a lot of the the rational thinker. But then there's some buyers that like they're already looking 5 years down the road and they need to see a certain type of copy that's going to appeal to them there. So I like that you mentioned that, all that to say. But I also appreciate, yes, while I teach the basis to any type of teaching that I'm going to do on copy is always about coming down to the formula. Use those copywriting formulas, but I don't think it should ever really look like it's in one. And I think that's where the magic of trying to figure out voice comes in, and your creativity, and your playfulness, and your ability to, know the rules, like, what is it? Like a pro, so you can break them like an artist, and be able to understand the fundamentals of why. So those 16 things I mentioned, they're in there for a reason, because they hit on those different things that different personalities are going to need, the different buyer personas are going to need. But at the same time, you've got to be able to wiggle and play in there. And that's why it's important to be able to DIY a lot of this stuff, because while a copywriter can take that off your plate and do that, if during install you don't understand the psychology behind it, stuff may be missed and lost in translation. And so there's just got to be a point where you know enough to be dangerous as an entrepreneur to do it yourself. But yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the success stories of somebody who, let's say for us, we are the experts in what we do. We think that we've got the copy down. It may not be the right copy at all, because what's in my head may not actually resonate well with my audience, but I think it does. So let's talk about some of the wins and successes of people who have taken your curriculum, taken your program, and have applied that and literally, flipped everything upside down on its head.
I love it. I think the best compliment I can ever get back is when, and at this point, CFC's had about 1,400 students go through. And so there are a good bit of people who have launched products using a long form sales page. And the best thing is when they tell me, like, I hated writing. I never thought I could do this. And I read it and, oh my gosh, I see multiple lines and I'm like, wait, I wish I wrote this. This is good. And that happens a lot. And I think that's the magic in, like, you can absolutely do this. And then they'll launch these. And yeah, we've got success story after success story. I know there is, maybe it's like a month ago, a $20,000 first launch that somebody had. We had somebody put out a product the other day. On Tuesday, was it? I sat and I recorded 20 looms for students that were inside that had gotten a loom recording of, like, their sales page. And so it was so fun to go through those and be like, this is dynamite. Change this around, move this up here, focus on this. Like, I love to help with the design install too on a sales page. I'm not a designer, but I know I've done enough of them with clients one-on-one and with students to know about, you need more white space there. You can't breathe, or, this carousel is not going to convert. So pull all those modules out and put them, I know it feels longer, but it's going to work. I promise you. So I would say, like, those are some of, we have, like, there's all the numbers and stuff, but I think it's that switch in their brain that goes from being like, I hate writing, to I cannot tell y'all how many times I see copy that, like, you're coming from my job, man, that's good. That is good. That was the most creative line that, like, socks me in the heart. That is good copy. And that happens so often. And that's truly the biggest compliment to me, and the most magical moment for me to see happen for students.
That's amazing. So for those of our listeners who are listening who know nothing about you, we always like to give a little bit of, like, authority in metrics, if we want to call it that. Yeah. You've been in your business for 6 months, right? Now, can you share?
4 years now.
Oh, sorry, 4 years.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
2016.
You've launched your curriculum 6 months ago. Is that right?
Sorry, I must have said it really confusing. In 2016. So we just finished a launch of Copywriting for Creatives. It was the 8th launch, and we launched it twice a year since 2016, and we finished that like 2 months ago.
Got it.
So okay. It's been out there a minute.
All right. Well, regardless of that, in the 4 years that you've been doing this, can you share some of your successes with us?
Yeah.
Like, overall, like your launches,
yeah,
figures, all of that.
I would say, so my first launch, was not, and that's the thing too. I think people, I recorded a YouTube video on this recently because I do think, especially in this space, we hear like six-figure launch. People forget the average conversion rate's 3%. That's going to be small, and that's okay. But like, and the amount of traffic and volume it takes for a launch to hit those numbers is crazy. Like I mean, I've had almost a $500,000 launch in my business. I've had multiple six-figure launches of my own. I've helped multiple clients hit $1 million launches. I've helped clients hit $30,000 months on a $297 product that's on Evergreen. Like, I've seen big numbers, but I've also seen the grit and the hustle and the push that they do to get the traffic in the door that can help. Like, I used to not take on sales pages unless I could touch the entire launch, because I was like, you're gonna either mentally think that I didn't help you or I wasn't a good investment, or you're not gonna realize the amount of push those emails need to have to land them on the sales page, so the sales page copy can do its job that I know I'm gonna be able to do if you let me at that copy. But you've got to understand that there's only a certain percentage statistically of the traffic that's going to convert on this page. I want to push it to the limit, and I can do that, but you've got to invest in the upfront of pulling the people on there. So I think like that's why I love talking about like marketing plans and the traffic that goes there. I love talking about like the email funnel that's going there. And then the other part of that, like we talked about, is making sure the product is, dang good and that it works. And because people, I've seen that too over time. A first launch of anything is hard. I tell a lot of people, like, your first launch, I think your goal should be make back your investment that you've spent in it and pay yourself for a few weeks. But beyond that, like, anything else needs to just be gravy, because I've seen this with clients who are quote unquote like household names. They will launch a product for the first time, and a lot of the launch is the brand awareness. She has a course about email marketing now. She's never taught that before. She's the Instagram girl. She has a course about this now. And a lot of people are going to that's like planting the seed, and they're going to buy it next time. And that is a really hard thing to measure. And so that's why I always want to teach, like, play that long game with courses and with launches. And it takes a lot of push and grit to hit those big numbers. But they're there, and they can be there on a first round. It just takes a lot of traffic.
So let's talk about traffic.
Yeah.
Because I think obviously that's a huge part of this industry, and everybody's big burning question is how to get traffic, how to build your tribe, how to create a community, and that's definitely something that Yasmin and I are going through right now, because for the past 10 years, we've been creating content for our clients, not for us. And now we've flipped the camera and are now in front of it. And so we're like, okay, but we actually created a course before even testing the market, but we don't have a community. We don't have an email list. What to do now?
Oh my God, Natalie, I love this. And especially because I can relate to y'all. I remember where I was. It was 20. So I'd been in business almost 12 months, and I was at my first little like mastermind event. It was unprofessional. It was just like some girls, right? Mastermind's a fancy name I'm slapping on, like a girls' weekend. But I started bawling because I was like, what have I, this first year, I've made so many other people money. I have made so many other people content. And that's a good thing. Like, I've done my job. I've been a service provider, but I was like, record scratch. I had not been doing this for my own business and for myself. And so I really had to figure out, like, okay, and it takes for a lot of us too that come from a service background where we're so client services focused. It's a little bit of turning the Titanic around to start to be like, okay, now I'm in the client seat, and I need to I spend so out of 5 days out of the week, I've gone down to 1 day a week on client work. The other, the engine takes 4, I would say at least 3.5 other days just focusing on my content and my, like, filling up my lists and filling up my funnels. So it takes a lot more time, I think, than I maybe would have initially looked at. But at least for me and where my audience is, a lot of like the platforms that we depend on, Pinterest marketing is huge for, again, I've got tons of wedding entrepreneurs and 96 to 97% female. So that works a lot. YouTube has been a great driver for us. I think its true magic is how it accelerates that know, like, trust factor, which is probably stuff that you have been preaching like till you're blue in the face, because I was a writer, I was a blogger. I didn't think that, I don't know, I was terrified to get on video, but it just accelerates that people feel like they know you. So those two, and then you probably know I'm going to say, but Facebook ads. Facebook ads have been so great. It's pay to play, and that's okay. I feel like sometimes they get a bad rap, but I have loved running Facebook ads, and they are, when they work, they work.
Love that. Facebook ads. Sorry, I have to jump in here really quick, Yasmin. Hold on to that thought. Facebook ads, because here's the thing about Facebook ads.
Okay.
There are, certain creators out there who are like very honest about the fact that they use advertising to sell their courses and their programs. And when I see these outrageous ad spend, like, oh, I've spent $8,000, but it doesn't matter because I made $30,000. It's like, what's your belief system around that? Like, is that realistic? Like, should we be spending like $8,000
I love Facebook this. Okay. Oh, y'all asking, these are such good questions. Okay. So the first time I ever ran ads for my first launch, I did it. I had no idea what I was doing. I just watched Jenna, and I was like taking notes, and I would just try different things. But what I started to learn is the first step is making sure the funnel works. Does the funnel work? Is the product dang good? Does it get results for people? Next step. Okay, let's make sure then that this sales page is dialed in and that it is working as best as it can. Next step, let's look back at the emails. Are they working as best? Don't throwing, we know this is a life lesson, right? Like, throwing money at a problem does not fix the problem. So at first, you've got to make sure that it is working and converting, and then it becomes exactly like you said, a game, and it's fun. I am not a gambling person. I will say that. Like, my husband definitely does sports gambling, and I always tell him, I'm like, babe, this is probably what your life feels like all the time. Because when we're going into a launch, I do get a little bit nervous. But to what you were saying, I know the lifetime value of the customer of every customer on my list. So I know I've spent, and I talk about it a lot in videos, but like, math coach class was a standard for me from third grade all the way through high school. So like, I am not a numbers girl, but the more time that I've spent figuring out, okay, if every person on my list can make me $160 over time, like, that's their lifetime spend value, then let me count back. Let me see, like, what would I be able to spend acquiring this person on my list in ad dollars to be profitable on the back end of it? That helps it make sense to me, makes it feel less like gambling. If I know we'll spend, and my numbers start like exactly like you said, but I've gotten to a point now, I think I was dulled to numbers because I was working on big campaigns, probably similar to y'all actually. Like, you work on big campaigns, you see these big numbers, and then you're like, here I am back in my own little business. But I do think I've gotten to a point now where I understand it looks to me, I see numbers going out in ads, and I'm like, well, that's a car. Like, cool, I could have bought a car with a nice used car. Mm-hmm. But then I see on the back end of it where it comes back. So I am a penny pincher. I have to understand how it's I hope that makes sense. I have to understand that we are going to profit off of it. And I think it comes down to knowing those granular numbers with me. Like, I have to have that math coach class session with myself where I understand, okay, we're spending $7 on this, but then the likelihood that we'll make 150 more is, 9 out of 10 odds. So it's a bet I'm willing to take. But none of that happened until I knew that the product got people results and the funnel was super dialed in.
Yeah, that's really important. And I had the same question, Nat. So we were on the same wavelength. And I think now the follow-up question to that is, you mentioned you got to make sure the funnel is working, that you've got a really great product that is actually doing what it needs to do. Yes. And I think that's sort of where we're at. We've built our funnel and we're trying to... we want to test it out. And yes, we do have a few people who are interested, who've been talking about it, who've been coming to us. And I think that's a great testing ground to put them through it and to really get their honest feedback and see what we can change. the question is, do we also, if let's say we have some funds and we're ready to gamble a little bit, should we put it behind some ad dollars to just see how it works? Like, I just don't want, like, I don't know how to measure if the funnel truly works.
Yeah. Okay. So let's rewind back a little bit. Tell me, so I've got a few follow-up questions for you. Have you ever like launched the offer what's the price point of the offer?
It's $397.
Okay.
This is like a coaching session.
Yeah. Wait.
Well, no pressure.
I thought it was
$349. Somewhere around there. That's helpful. Okay, so the way I look at it too, that's a pretty big price point to put in front of a cold audience, right? Like that's pretty big. So what I would do is count, like, okay, there's a few things I would do. First of all, you said you have an email list, right?
So here's the thing. Let's just tell you a little bit about our email list, because our email list are people in our network. They are not necessarily people who will be interested. They might know someone who is interested, but essentially it's an email list of existing clients from our agency days.
Love.
Yeah,
okay.
You can probably relate to this. This is like our previous life of the decade that we created content for big brands.
Love.
So when I imagine this person who's on our email list, I'm like, this is like Joe, CEO of like a multi-million-dollar corporation, and I'm here like, hey, buy my super simple video editing program.
He's like, I'll outsource that, thanks. Like, yes. Okay, so the first step I would do before I ever threw dollar, because like looking at too, like a $347 product, if it were like a $27, $17 like tripwire pulling them in, I think that can go to cold traffic. But the first thing I would do is focus on building the audience and the traffic of people that would be an incredible purchaser one day. And I think like some strategies that we've used to do that are, first of all, we pay to boost ads. Like that's where I put your money into first. If you really want to like you're putting these videos up on, do y'all do like YouTubes too? And like,
we need to get on the YouTubes.
Well, you're creating, y'all have the video content. So like we are constantly repurposing video content, pulling the video from YouTube, putting the full video on Facebook, putting half the video on Facebook and then driving it to YouTube, but then we're boosting those. So we're growing the number of impressions that like that ad is showing up in multiple people's feeds. Then we're going to retarget them with a freebie opportunity, an opt-in for them to get on the list. Then they're going to go through the opt-in welcome sequence. It's about 7 emails. Then I'm going to start warming them up for the course itself. Then I'm going to pitch them into the course. So that's where I know like that is going to lead to cheaper leads down the road anyway, because when I'm spending ad dollars, I hope that makes sense, but when I'm spending ad dollars later on like, hey, cart closing on like this offer I told you about, if I'm targeting people who, you know, are already on my list, are so the no like trust factor with my face, like they feel like we're friends, you know, I've been in their inbox for 3 months, like crazy. So, you know, I probably talked to them on social media apps. I probably sent them a Loom video before. So me pitching them on an offer is a lot less weird because it's, because we know each other at that point. So that's probably where I would I would spend money on lead gen, like just getting like those freebie options out there. But I would also, if you girls are great on camera, so like get that out there and like get them used to your faces and then ask them out on that first date of hopping on the opt-in list and then warm them up for the big pitch.
Yeah, that's really great advice. The one thing that we have going, like we've been working, obviously our podcast has been huge because course creators are our audience. Like we are literally the guinea pigs. We're putting ourselves through the ringer so that we can help others. And we're creating a hub, coursecreation.com, which then is going to be a resource hub for everything. Once we build more credibility in the space, then we can be a resource for them on a whole other level than what we're doing. We're just scratching the surface right now.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking maybe like repurposing our podcast videos because they're on YouTube, like doing something around the podcast, like getting more people to listen in and then they get to know us and us as the video gals and what we can offer might be a good approach too. So saying this all out loud so that we are brainstorming creatively and maybe for our listeners out there, it's inspiring something for you too, I hope.
I love it. Okay, one more thing that has helped me so much over the years to kind of figure out, and if there's anybody listening that's heard me talk about this before, I talk about it because it works. But I run my year on what I call like quarterly champagne campaigns. So I have like one big quarterly push that I'm going to do into a launch. But I back that up 6 to 8 weeks and I try to brainstorm and think about the pieces of content. I come up with like one hero piece of content every week. So that's usually what my YouTube is about. And that's what all the other pieces of content spiderweb out from. But those 6 to 8 things have got to be overcoming objections about why somebody would not buy whatever it is, or why they don't think they need it, or why they think, oh, that's for, pats on the head, somebody who's in that category, but not for me. No, sister, it's for you. And I'm going to teach you how in this YouTube video. So those are the kind of like pieces of content that I'm creating. And they all have an opt-in attached to them. I typically only use like 3 opt-ins per launch. That's something I've tested over time, and that's where I've come down to. And then that pulls them into the funnel as well.
Very cool.
That's so interesting. We hear about launches and how to go through a launch, but what we don't really hear about is all of the work and all the detail that goes into before people even get to your sales page, right?
I love pre-launch. I love talking about pre-launch, probably because nobody talks about it. And I'm like, I think
nobody talks about it.
No, and like if you miss that, like I think it comes from a place of me seeing so many people be like, I failed my launch, and I just want to like grab their faces and say that you did not fail. You did not fail your launch. Nobody knew it. Nobody was primed for it. Your launch, your stats were great. 3%'s normal. Your stats were great. No one knew about it. And you can't blame yourself for what you didn't know. So I think I just have seen that so many times that's why I'm like, you just have to make them ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about priming our audience. Yeah. You've kind of already hit on it already. Like you'll have your frame of like objection points where you create content around that and sort of create YouTube videos with specific opt-ins.
Yes.
Outside of that, do you have any other advice of what else you can do to prime your audience?
I would craft a story. Like look at yourself as like you are the creative director of your launch. You're like, in that director's chair, and you get to build this story arc too. You can go at like, do you want to tell like your story with it? Do you want to talk about an underdog story, through it all? Like how do you want to position? And maybe you try a few different things, but like I think playing with this story concept throughout and also too, when I'm in pre-launch and I've picked out like, okay, these are the dominoes that need to fall to get somebody to understand why they need this. These are the content ideas I'm going to play around. I'm testing messaging ideas through that. I'm throwing out different messaging ideas and seeing when I send out an email, we've got 20 responses of people being like, I needed this today. Ding, 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 winner, winner, chicken dinner. That's going like somewhere in the funnel messaging to remind them of again, because a lot of what you're trying to do before they ever get to the sales conversation, obviously we know starts like way back, right? Like it backs up. And by the time they get deep in your sales funnel, you're just trying to help them understand like, yes or no. Like you're coaching a binary decision at that point. Yes, I want it. No, I don't. You should not be having to convince them of anything as far as like they should want your product because it's going to accelerate what they've been doing for weeks through your content, And so I think how you're helping them overcome that every single week in pre-launch is so important. I do always back up 6 to 8 weeks. That's pretty standard. Even if it's, and I would say like when I say launch, I'm talking about usually like 7 days of hard pushing, sometimes 5, but usually 7. I think, the 14-day carts are great for the Marie Forleos, the people that have staff, and energy is a bear to get through for us mere mortals because you're the energy that it takes to sustain pre-launch and into like a sales push is big. Also, I'm kind of like jumping, but I feel like some of the things I did differently this past launch that just like helped us have our biggest one ever. And I did a YouTube episode on this, but I got so in the trenches more than I ever have before. I think I did it out of fear with COVID and just truly having no idea where sales were going to land. So I talked to people constantly. I was in my DMs all the time. I made my our Google number available. I hopped on calls with people. I was constantly sending looms and videos and bonjoros. And I just really wanted to help people decide or not, because people are watching their pocketbooks right now. So that was one thing too, I think that helped a lot, that I probably should experiment in the future with doing, like, how can I bake that into pre-launch? Because it did make a big difference. But people want to buy from people. So
You mentioned that Pinterest is definitely like a resource center for you, which makes absolute sense for your audience. And obviously, we've heard time and time again to go into Facebook groups, have conversations with people in those groups, because that's where our audience lives too. Have you done some of that as well? Or and what's the strategy there? Obviously, what we do know is that you don't just go into a Facebook community and say, hey guys, here's my offer, and then peace out. Like, that's obviously not going to work. But what kind of nurturing would you suggest someone does as part of those communities to be able to then,
Yeah. So, and this is fun too, because I kind of get to rewind and think about, especially like 2017, 18 Ashlyn, before I had, because now it's like we've got an army of students at this point who will, when somebody says like, hey, I need a course on copywriting, somebody's going to answer that and likely say mine. It was not like that for years, you know? So I have this, I'm going to sound like the most anal human on planet Earth. And I only have all these systems in place because I am the most shiny object, distractible person ever. And so if I give myself a little routine, I'll likely do it. But I have what I call an R&B and RO session at the end of every day. So for like 30 minutes, I'll set a clock. And I talked about this in a recent YouTube, but when I was in agency, the agency owner called it like relationship building R&B, because it's like R&B music. It should be fun. It should be easy and relaxed, instead of like networking style. So an RO for reach out. So do you have like a dream 100 list? I have a list of like 100 people that I would love to work with. And then so each day for the 5 days that I work, I have like 10 names written down or groups that I'm going to go into. So maybe it's like a podcast community group, or a course group that I'm in, or just like an influencer that I would love to like get to know. And so every day I'm spending time, on Mondays, it's those 10 names. Tuesdays is a different set each day of the week. But every week I'm hitting back on those and spending time in there. So I do think that interacting in Facebook groups has been helpful for me, especially during the early days. And then I would also set a timer and like just answer questions and try to just be really helpful in those groups. So I think that was helpful in helping people understand my name. I will say too, though, because year to year it changes, and like 2017, 18, people were a little bit more, you could talk about your freebie a little bit more. That's kind of clamped down, and that's okay, I think, for good reason. So I think one of the ways around that how you can kind of breadcrumb and seeds is like doing user testing in the groups, or testing concept ideas. So polls like, hey, I'm going to teach a webinar in the coming weeks on this. Which one would you rather learn about? And so like getting messaging concepts from the groups, but maybe not counting on them as much for like leads, because I just feel weird about that, getting leads from there. So I would rather depend on those groups for just community and relationship building, and then testing, just hearing ideas and like swiping copy that they're saying and that kind of thing.
That's such great advice. Thank you for sharing that. It's really cool. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's honestly for me is like a daunting idea, like to have to go into Facebook groups and interact in a way where like eventually, after having interacted with all these different groups every single day for X amount of time, then maybe that'll convert. So and I don't know, is that what that looks like?
That, I mean, what you said is like how I feel like, I was thinking of this the other day when I was having breakfast. How people say like, she's doing the most. I feel like I do the least. And like, I feel like I do the least to make the most as much as I can. Like, I love to work, but I also love to hang out with my kid, and like I like to take naps. So for me, if I'm looking at the value of my time, well, yes, I could spend hours every day inside Facebook groups answering questions, and it'd be so fun. Or I can set my clock, spend 30 minutes a day talking to people on the internet through groups and DMs and all that, and then I can spend $100 boosting some videos to push in front of people who I know are a great fit. I think I'd rather go that way, because it's hard for me to look at, okay, so if I spend an hour a day for 5 days out of the week, so that's like how many, 30 hours every month, maybe. Like how many, I just don't know if I can prove, if that's a provable way to show that I'm going to, like, is it going to give me students? I don't know. Does that make sense? I hope that
It
doesn't
does.
sound icky, but
No, it doesn't. I think it's all about, we always talk about, working hard, working smart. I think strategically what we've gathered is you need to test the waters. You need to be active. You need to do a little bit of this and that. And yeah, in the earlier days, it might be something that you might not necessarily want to do, but you just don't know until you try it. And it doesn't have to be a daunting task of maybe multiple hours a day. Even carving out that half an hour could accelerate things. But
yeah,
I think we've got lots of strategies to work with, and a lot of people are going to spend time on Facebook and those communities. So we have a lot of great tips as to what you should be doing, should you choose to do that.
Yes, it's a good spot. It can just easily be a time suck, as we all know. So set that timer.
Exactly. Well, Ashlyn, we are approaching the end of our time with you. So, Nat, do you want to take the question, because you always do?
Yes. There's one last question we always ask all of our guests. But before I ask you that question, I have another last question.
Bring it on.
I'm just curious in regards to like automation and tools.
Yeah.
What are your favorites?
I am a tool nerd. So we were on Trello for years, and I'm in Asana now, and I like it a lot. Voxer. Do y'all use Voxer?
Not yet, but we've heard it multiple times. We have to start using it. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. I went in like kicking and screaming, but my integrator, who I brought in an integrator for the first time this January, and we have always used Slack, and it just is so, and even with friends, the fact that you can like triple and even double and triple and quadruple speed, people, has just been really nice to like get thoughts out and across. And then I use the Focus Keeper app all of the time. There's Voxer notifications on my phone. So I use this to like count down. I'm always setting myself on work sprints, and I'm like, okay, I can't get snacks. I can't get up and go to the bathroom. I have to, like, for 25 minutes, do this one thing. And then it's amazing how the thing that I've put off for like 4 days is just something I can get done in 15 minutes, So
what platform do you use to host your curriculum?
Kajabi, and love it. I went from Teachable to Thinkific to Kajabi.
Very cool.
Love Kajabi. Yeah.
Amazing. We also use Kajabi, so we know.
Yeah.
I just needed you to verify that.
You are verified, my friend. They're so good.
All right. So the question that we ask every single guest that comes on, if you had to leave our listeners with one last wisdom bomb, what would it be?
Oh, so good. So good. Build a business that runs when you can't. I think just like I'm always trying to do that. I'm always playing the long game. I'm always trying to figure out how I can pull myself out. I saw that in June. We came off that huge launch, and then we saw riots around the US, and I couldn't function. Like I needed to process. I needed to pray. I was sad. Like it was just so much. And we still hit our revenue goals. And it was because I worked my butt off in the months before, but I could count on my YouTubes to keep getting views, and my content on Pinterest to keep getting repinned, and traffic to keep coming to my website to get into my funnels. And I could rest and just Sabbath and figure out what I wanted to do next. And I remember that somebody told me that build a business that runs when you can't. It was January of 2018, and it stuck. And here we are 2 years later, and I'm still trying to do that. But it served me well during times when I need to step away for a minute.
That's beautiful.
Amazing.
Thank you for sharing that with us. And you've been so open and honest and vulnerable with us, and you've shared so many amazing parts of yourself. So thank you for that.
Y'all are so welcome. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I'm truly an open book about stuff. So I don't know, life's too short to hold any of this back. So
that is true. That is true.
Really appreciate it, Ashlyn. So for our listeners who are interested in connecting and reaching out to you, where can they find you?
Yeah, my website is Ashlyn Writes, like with a pen, writes.com. And then my handle on Instagram and pretty much every social media app is Ashlyn S. Carter.
Awesome.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. It's been so amazing having you on our show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
That's a wrap on another episode of the Course Creation Podcast. Thank you for tuning in and being a champion of ours. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit subscribe and find us on Apple Podcasts to leave us a review. We really want to hear from you. And we're going to be digging through reviews for our next guest to feature. So if you're interested in being a guest, then you know what to do. Also, join our private Facebook community called the Course Creation Crew to connect with other course creators. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at coursecreation.com. That is all. We appreciate you all so much and look forward to having you here next time.